Bonjour, comment allez-vous? Hello, how are you? I hope you guys are well. Dr. Dinka here with a video lecture titled France's Education System. In this week's lecture, I am providing an overview of the French education system with a look at the structure, credentials, and some of its history. I am also sharing some of my personal experience with the French education system. When I was young and I lived in Europe, in a Francophone country, um, that had an education system modeled after the French. And I also took the BAC exam at the end of the high school that had the same name, the BAC. All right, so let's get started. I have put together a PowerPoint for you. Hopefully you find it useful. And I'm going to be sharing this with you, okay? All right, so education is a priority in France, with about 21% of the annual national budget earmarked for education, and the country boasts a 99% literacy rate. This is not surprising if you guys remember the role that France has had in the world and its civilizing mission, as it was stated in the article that we read earlier in the semester. Now, France's education has a long history, and it started with the University of Paris, one of the world's oldest universities that was founded in 1215. Prior to 1789, education was controlled by the Catholic Church, and after the French Revolution, a standardized and centralized education system was instituted. Also, the University of Sorbonne, that's located in Paris as well, was founded in 1257. So I like to start with talking about some of the differences between the US education system and the French education system, and then we're going to analyze them in detail. So first, the grading scale is different in France comparing to um, the US. And this is from the article that you had to read for this week. And you can see here the US grade equivalent in letters. And the French, now you have two scales. One that starts from 0 to 14, and the second one that starts from 0 to 20. And this one was the one instituted by Napoleon Bonaparte in the 1800s, and it still stands today. Also, the French education system, it's mandatory, or what they call compulsory, um, between the ages of 6 and 16. The academic year, actually, they start school in September and they end in June. A lot of their exams are in June as well. And we start here, you have a chart of the education system. So it starts at the bottom with l'enseignement élémentaire, the primary education, followed by le collège. This would be a junior secondary education, followed by le lycée. This would be high school. So you have several of these. You have le lycée général, that this would be a senior secondary general education. Then you have, for those people specializing in different trades, you have lycée technologique and lycée professionnel. And then this is when you earn le baccalauréat or le bac. That's the short for this, the short name for this exam. Now, for those students who continue on to university level, they're usually going for their bachelor's, and that's called la licence. This would be the university education. Some people choose to go for the master, called le master de recherche professionnelle, and le doctorat. So some also choose to enroll and study in a PhD program. Coming back here to this, to some of the differences, Regarding the university, tuition is almost free. It's about, they have a yearly fee of about 170 euros. It comes to about $200 a year. And the whole education system is centered around this idea of culture générale, so general knowledge about a wide range of subjects. And it starts from the primary school, goes all the way through high school, and concludes with le bac, the exam that's also testing a lot of this culture générale. Now, let's have a look more closely at the various cycles of education. So we have the elementary education that's mandatory, as we mentioned, between the ages of 6 and 16. So l'enseignement élémentaire begins at age 6, lasts for about 5 years, divided into 2 cycles. You have the basic learning cycle for 2 years and the consolidation cycle for 3 years. Now, the elementary education focuses on French, mathematics, reading and writing, social sciences, science, and introduction of a first foreign language. And you'll see that by the time French students are in high school, they know 2 foreign languages. Secondary education, following elementary school, students enroll in secondary school. Secondary education is divided into 2 levels. You have the lower secondary, enseignement secondaire de premier cycle, and the upper secondary, enseignement secondaire de deuxième cycle. Now, the lower secondary education, it's taught at middle schools called le collège, and is open to all students who have completed elementary school. The program is 4 years in length and consists of 4 grades numbered in the standard order. Now, studies begin in the 6th year, le sixième, and end in the year 3, troisième. And the curriculum focuses on French, foreign language, mathematics, history and geography, life and earth science, physics and chemistry, art, technology, music, and physical education. At the end of lower secondary school, students take a national examination in one of the 3 areas or 3 streams, academic, technological, or vocational. And those who pass the examination earn the Diplôme National de Brevet, and those who fail the examination earn a school leaving certificate called le Certificat de Formation Générale. Moving on to high school, you have the upper secondary education, and this is 3 years in length and is comprised of years 10, 11, and 12, called seconde, première, and terminale. Upper secondary education takes place at high school. In French, they're called le lycée. And at the end of the first year, la seconde, students choose a stream of study or a major that will be followed for the final 2 years of upper secondary study, leading to the baccalaureate examinations. And the general academic stream culminates in Diplôme de Baccalauréat Général. Now, the baccalaureate program, so the academic stream is offered in 3 concentrations. You have literary, economic, and social sciences, and scientific. And students have to be very careful when they choose this particular concentration area, because that will determine what they'll be studying at university level. So, for example, if somebody chooses the literary track, it's very difficult for them to go on and study medicine at university level, for example, because older classes and everything they're preparing for, it's going to be a career in the humanities. Now, students follow a curriculum of math, science, life and earth sciences, or engineering sciences, physics and chemistry, philosophy, languages, civics, social science, and physical education during their final year of study. Students in the literary stream, on the other hand, focus their coursework on languages, history and geography, the arts, and literature. Sometimes they have to know three different foreign languages or regional languages. And students in the science stream focus their coursework on science and math, while students in the economic and social science stream focus on economics and social sciences, history and geography, math, and languages. Now, the French baccalaureate, or le bac, it's an extensive national exam taken at the end of le lycée, the high school, upon completion of 11th and 12th grades, and it marks the successful conclusion of secondary studies, and it is the required qualification in France for students wishing to carry on their studies in higher education. It is a very stressful exam. I took it, and you have to know a lot. You have to be prepared because you have to know the class material that you studied for 2 years in high school. And it's not just one subject, it's several subjects. And we're going to look at a sample of how this bac exam is structured. Now, the baccalaureate, even though it has only existed in this present form as a school leaving exam since Napoleon Bonaparte's implementation in 1808, it's still a long time. Its origins date back to the first medieval French universities, and according to French law, the baccalaureate is the first academic degree, though it grants the completion of secondary education. And here you have a sample, Diplôme de Baccalauréat Général. So this is for student in France, and it's a very important document because, as I mentioned, this will make sure that you have access to enroll in a university, or at least to apply to study at a university in France. The process is a little bit different than in the United States, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. Now, le bac, as we mentioned, students typically study for the bac over 2 years between the ages of 16 and 18. There are different options available depending on their preference and the desires of higher education and or career paths. So you have to choose a career path early, and sometimes it's very difficult if you're trying to change career paths. But again, at 16, people are young, so that's one of the controversies of the bac, right? What if somebody changes their mind later on? What if they are not good at that particular track that they're studying? They should be able to change tracks more easily. So here we have the curriculum, the exam format for the Baccalauréat Général for the series de Scientifique. So the S streams, as you mentioned, prepare students for work in scientific fields such as medicine, engineering, and natural sciences. And science students must specialize in mathematics, physics and chemistry, computer science, or earth and life sciences. And students in the stream must generally have a good result in physics and chemistry, math, earth and life science, and if available, engineering sciences and computer science. And you can see here the format of this exam. It starts with the French language, and it also has a French literature component, and it has 2 parts. You have a written part of about 4 hours. So yes, you'll be sitting there writing for 4 hours, and then you have also an oral examination part. This is a little bit more difficult, more nerve-wracking, because sometimes you have several teachers or professors in that committee. They can be from out of town because they're trying to have this as a fair exam. But look, you also, these people who are in the science track, they are also being tested in what? In history and geography. It's a written exam that lasts about 3 hours. Of course, their main area, concentration areas that were sciences, right? So math, physics, chemistry, earth science, biology. So this is to be expected. But look what's interesting. They have a first foreign language exam, and then they have a second foreign language, original language. So by the time they graduate high school, most French students, they have to know 2 foreign languages. Not only that, but they're being tested on them at the end of their high school career. Plus, very important, they also have a philosophy exam, and this lasts about 4 hours. And it's very important because people usually discuss the questions for this philosophy exams. It's something that it's a topic that people often discuss after the exam is over. And you also have a physical education at the end. Now, here are some back exam questions for French students studying English. So, for example, they have to put the verbs in the correct tense for each one of these. Okay, so they meet in Paris this afternoon at 3. So students will have to know, okay, so is this talking about the past? Future is that they will meet in Paris or they are meeting in Paris. Same for this one. For example, number 3, I wish we, of course, is not be. We are on a holiday right now. I wish we were. So these are not easy concepts in English, but students have to know them for this exam. So again, it's a lot of preparation, a lot of effort, a lot of work. Now, the results of the BAC, they're posted outside the doors of their schools. When I took it, they put your name and the score. And of course, all your classmates can see it, people from the town. Now it has changed a little bit with great privacy. So you have a certain number so that it's not as easily identifiable of who took that particular exam, but in some regions they still do the names and then the grade. I'm also sharing the experience of Sandy, and she was a student who studied in France, and in her blog she talks about the experience of in one of the years in 2016, the questions of the BAC was stolen. And remember, this is a national exam. They cannot stop the exam. They cannot redo the questions. So some students had an unfair advantage. And because of that, the following year, they had very strict measures, security measures for this. So the student mentions, and I'm quoting from her website, that she says the questions on them are wrapped in 3 different plastic films. Count them, 3. They were shipped by truck out to the test centers with an escort vehicle to make sure no one hijacked them en route. At 7:50 a.m., the forms are taken out of the safes in which they stayed overnight under guard. Of course, students are not allowed to bring to the exam any documents into the test room, or any briefcases or backpacks or even fanny packs. Of course, no cell phones allowed, no iPads, nothing, just your ID, something to write with. So it's a very strict exam. Now, regarding the method of evaluation for the BAC, and also in general, when did students started being evaluated? When did their work start to be evaluated in the Western culture? So it goes back to the 12th century in Europe, when students were evaluated by oral disputation in Latin. In the 14th century, some written examinations occurred, but were rare. Now, by the 16th century, the Catholic Church was struggling against the Protestant Reformation, and were advancing the Catholic scholarship as a defensive doctrine. This is when we also have the Society of Jesus that was created by St. Ignatius of Loyola. And with this also came the Jesuit colleges that are very prestigious. Even today, we have several Jesuit colleges, universities, high schools, even in the US. So back then, one of the Jesuit colleges, the Collegio Romano, published the Ratio Studiorum in 1599. It's this book right here. That was a book of rules for Jesuit education, in which official procedures for examinations, competitions, and homework were outlined, along with a method for ranking and classifying students. So this was one of the first books that talks about a more formalized method of evaluations of students' work. During the Ancien Regime in France, that was between the 15th and 18th century, the oral examination was still the most common method of evaluating students. In about 1558, the school in Portugal was the first European school to distribute prizes to the best students. And by the end of the century, other schools followed suit. Now, By the end of the 18th century, schools in France were beginning to publish bulletins with student evaluations and class rankings. And the Jesuit college at Caen would develop a numerical 4-point ranking. So they had 4 niveaux, right here, 4 levels. You have, for the one, it's bien, good. You have 2 assez bien, quite good. And then you have le 3, the third one, mediocre, and 0, unsatisfactory. And even in the early days of the baccalaureate, that again was, as we mentioned, was created in 1808 by Napoleon, the oral evaluation committee members expressed their appraisal of candidates with colored balls. For example, red for favorable, white for abstention, black for unfavorable. And in the Second French Empire, the representation of colored balls was converted into a numerical system from 0 to 5. And then in 1890, the numerical system was 0 to 20 that was created along with the modern French baccalaureate, which comprises several stages of written examinations, as we mentioned. Now, some people didn't like the system. We had student rebellions of 1968, and in the bulletin that came out in January 6th of 1969, they recommended a change from 0 to 20 grading scale to a qualitative evaluation, such as a very satisfactory, unsatisfactory, etc., or adopting a more general A, B, C, D, E letter system as we have in the United States, or a simplified numerical system, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But before the change could be fully implemented, the recommendation was reversed in a bulletin on July 9th, 1971, which recommended the continuation of the 0 to 20 system that still takes place today. Now, here are some sample back questions from the philosophy exam. For example, for the literary track, students were asked what is gained by working. Que gagne-t-on en travaillant? For the scientific track, would we be more free without the state? Serions-nous plus libres sans l'État? And the other one is working merely being useful? Travailler, est-ce que seulement être utile? So students had to write, remember this exam for the philosophy track is about 4 hours. So they have to quote different philosophers in their answers or works that they study. So this is a big essay, and it has to be written by hand. Okay, so let's talk now about the higher education, and we'll start with the admission process. So the admission to higher education is based on the baccalaureate examination. So this determines the grades for this, determines if you're getting into a good higher education institution. And some selective higher education programs offer the Grande École, require students to take a competitive exam on concours for entrance into the program, and that's because there are only so many spots available and more students. So when you take this concours, this exam, this is actually similar to a BAC exam, but it's geared more towards the specialty that you plan on studying at that particular university. Sometimes you compete with 3 other students for the same spot. In other schools can be 5, 7. So there's a lot of competition. And also, in order to take this examination, le concours, students generally complete 2 years of preparatory study, classe préparatoire at specialized high schools, lycée. Now, in regards to universities, there are about 83 public universities in France, and 80 of the tertiary student population attends these institutions as they are very accessible, affordable, and offer many programs of study. Now, 3-tier system of education universities are the bachelor's degree, la licence, the master's degree, le master, and the doctorate, le doctorat. What about tuition rates in public institutions? And this is very interesting because it's not just in France, but in other countries as well. For example, if we look at this chart, We see that in Norway, tuition is free for EU students and even for non-EU students. Sweden, same, but then for if you're not, if you're a student that's from a state that's not a member of the European Union, then you have to pay a fee. Okay, and same with Germany, Iceland. Now in France, it's interesting that the same tuition is paid for students who are from a country member of the European Union, as well as those who are not. And the tuition starts at about 180 euros and goes up to about 650 euros. Businesses for the whole year. And why is this? Well, that's because so these tuition fees are lower in France because the French government subsidizes the higher education. So the true cost of education is about the same as elsewhere in the world, around 10,000 euros a year. But as you mentioned, the difference is that in France, the government assumes a large share of the cost. And this is where you have the tuition charges for the academic year 2018-2019. We have 170 euros at the licence bachelor level, and they can go up for example, for somebody who's studying engineering, they have to pay about 600 euros, and doctorate, it's a little bit more expensive too, about 380 per year at the doctorate level. Now, as you mentioned, in France, the academic year begins in September, October, it usually ends in May or June. Year is punctuated by vacations. Students have about 2 weeks at the end of the year of the semester, and the 2 semesters are divided by a short break following final examinations at the end of the first semester. And then, of course, you have more examinations at the end of the second semester. Some of them are quite extensive because they are, so those examinations that are taking place in June after the first year or second year studies. So students are tested on a lot of lectures, a lot of the material from the whole academic year. I have heard, for example, some French professors, they don't use PowerPoints in their classes or technology. They like to lecture. It's very traditional, and you have to take notes. That's the only way to pass the class. Sometimes if students don't come to class, they have one of their friends take notes. So at any point, they have to know what's going on in order to be successful. Now let's talk about Le Grand École, because one of the videos that we're viewing for this week has the topic of Le Grand École. So what are they? So in addition to universities, France is home to about 200 Grand Écoles. Now these schools are similar to Ivy League schools in the United States. They are specialized institutions, and about 30 of them are considered to be very prestigious. They offer programs in areas such as engineering, education, architecture, business administration, and admission to the Grande École requires the completion of 2 years of preparatory study and passing a competitive examination here too, called again also Le Concours. It's followed by a 3-year program of study, and some schools admit students directly after the bac exam and offer a 5-year program leading to a diploma in engineering. École Polytechnique, one of the most known Grande École, is located in Palaiseau, France, specializes in science and engineering, as a founding member of the Polytechnic Institute of Paris. And it's interesting that the school was founded in 1794 by mathematician Gaspard Monge during the French Revolution, and was militarized under Napoleon I in 1804, and it's still being supervised by the French Ministry of Armed Forces, and originally located in the Latin Quarter in the central part of Paris. The institution moved to Palaiseau in 1976 in the Paris-Saclay Technology Cluster. Now, about its history, Polytechnic's historic engineering graduate program has a very selective admission process consisting of both written and oral exams following class préparatoire or a bachelor's degree. French engineering students undergo initial military training and have the status of paid officer cadets. This is very interesting, right? Because they have, again, we have the military, right? This military influence in the school that still takes place today. And the school, École Polytechnique, has also been awarding doctorates since 1985, master's since 2005, and bachelor's since 2017. And most Polytechnic graduates go on to become top executives in companies, senior civil servants, military officers, or researchers. But this, again, is not without controversy, as that video that we're studying mentions, right, about it's a very elitist school. It's lacking minorities, and there are some efforts to change it. And we'll discuss that more in the discussion that we have on Canvas that's due this week. All right, so hope that you enjoyed this lecture on France's education system. If you have any questions, send me an email. If you have any suggestions, send me an email as well. And à la prochaine. Till next. Au revoir. Bye-bye.